we're back and we're moving into our second conversation for today, where we get to find out more about a very innovative program that is being done through the International Development Bank along with the World Tourism Organization. And it's called a Beyond Tourism Innovation Challenge. Here to tell us more, at least here virtually that is, we have Dr. Cassandra Rogers, who is the IDB country representative to Belize. We have Dora Moscoso, who is the Operations Senior Associate for the IDB Lab. And we have Terry-Ann Segree, who is also an Operations Senior Specialist for the IDB Lab. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, ladies.
Good morning, my lady.
Thank you all for joining us this morning as we get to find out more about this opportunity that exists, not just for Belize, but other countries in the Caribbean as well. Before we get into it, though, it is a great time to be able to kind of do a summary of what IDB has been doing in respect of Belize, Dr. Rogers, in assistance through the pandemic. So let's start with that.
Thank you, Marlene. Very happy to be here. Of course, no need to say we are facing it every day of the reality of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the case of Belize, of course, the impact has been significant, as in many other countries, given the fact of the high dependence of the Belizean economy on tourism. The impact is expected to be significant. For example, Standard & Poor's has said that of the most tourism-dependent economies in the world, Belize is expected to be the third most impacted.
Wow.
The bank, of course, once the pandemic presented itself, mobilized its resources consistent with its vision and mission to improve lives for the social and economic development of Belize. Several things the bank did. First, we made availability of additional financing to the extent of $2 billion to support both the immediate health response as well as economic impacts. In the case, and this is on the IDB side, this is on the public sector side, because as you know, Marlene, I know perhaps most Belizeans are familiar with the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, but indeed we are the IDB group, and we consist of three arms. The IDB works with the public sector and governments. IDB Invest, this is the private sector arm of the bank. It provides financing to private sector institutions and financial intermediaries. And then IDB Lab, which is the innovation lab of the IDB group that mobilizes finance, knowledge, and connection to promote innovation and inclusion in the private sector. And this is the area of the bank that has launched the Beyond Tourism Challenge that we are here to talk to you about.
Yeah.
So
In terms of what was the specific response to COVID in Belize,
Yes.
First, we worked very closely with the Ministry of Health in collaboration with PAHO and in consultation with the Ministry of Finance as well as the Ministry of Economic Development. And very early, perhaps a week after the pandemic, the bank was able to provide $46,000 in grant for the purchase of testing kits. In addition to that, we also provided grant financing from the IDB's Japan Special Fund in the amount of $130,000 to provide equipment for medical health workers. Subsequently to that, we approved two operations, one just last week. The first operation was a $6.2 million operation to support the immediate health response. And this was at the request of the government. Resources from an existing program, the Sustainable Tourism Program, were reallocated to the immediate health response. And this is to be used, of course, and is already being used. Much of the resources have already been dispersed, are being used to purchase equipment to strengthen the preparedness of the Ministry of Health and other activities. In addition, we also approved a second operation last week, a $12 million operation to support vulnerable populations. We are well aware of the high level of unemployed, people who have been unemployed, particularly in the tourism sector in Belize. And this operation is designed to provide support to Belize's unemployment relief program, supporting both those who are formally and informally employed in the tourism sector. So this is the level of support that we have provided to date, Marlena. We continue to be in discussions with the government regarding support at the fiscal level.
And I think, thank you for the overview. I think it is critical for us to understand just the level of support that has been offered to us so far. One of the questions I have, though, when you're looking at a global pandemic, it means countries across the world are affected. How does Belize fit into that priority? And how do you work along with the bank to help them identify our needs as so critical?
Well, in terms of Belize's needs, of course, we have frequent dialogue with the government, because the bank, of course, responds to the country's needs based on that continued dialogue with the government. And this is what was done very early once the pandemic was announced. We had a round of meetings with the government in which the government said to the bank, we would like support, urgent support, to address the immediate health response. We also would like support to address the over 40,000 we understood that were unemployed in the tourism sector. And also, we also discussed on the possibility of providing fiscal support for additional liquidity. So to respond to your question, how in terms of how Belize fits in, the bank stands ready, of course, to provide support to any country, and the kind and level of support is dependent on the demands of the country and the dialogue that we have with the country. For example, at the present time, now that we have completed our support in terms of the immediate health response, we are now engaged in preliminary discussions with the government in terms of post-COVID economic recovery. What does the government see that looking like, and therefore how can the bank support? And this is just discussions at a very preliminary nature at this time.
And that, of course, is a great segue into this latest project with IDB Lab. One of the things that we've clearly identified is that there are so many different levels that there has to be work ongoing. We got to look at the immediate needs of people, as you pointed out, kind of offering assistance for unemployment, for people who are struggling in this time. You want to look at medium and long-term development as well. And I see this particular opportunity as one that is looking at the situation beyond what we're experiencing today, preparing us for the next phase of living through a pandemic. So let me get some insight, and we can perhaps get Terry Ann and Dora involved in the conversation here about the conversation that took place with the World Tourism Organization to understand why this was the best way or the best idea that you decided to move forward with.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for having us, and we are happy to be here and to speak about the Beyond Tourism Challenge, but also in the broader context to speak about IDB Lab and how we are providing support across Belize. As you rightly said, having those discussions is at the crux of what IDB Lab is all about. We're a laboratory innovation, so we discuss with innovation ecosystem players, private sector, and civil society on how we can come up with market-based solutions for what is happening in each country. And that's what we were doing when we thought about the pandemic and the impact across Belize and across the rest of the islands and the countries that are heavily dependent on tourism. How can we pull together stakeholders, private sector, civil society, actors within the tourism industry to come up with a solution? And Dora will speak more to the challenge, but this is the way our IDB lab works, trying to mobilize funding along with our funding with the innovation ecosystem for market-driven solutions, for solutions that will have impact, and those solutions that will impact the vulnerable communities. And I'll allow Dora to address the challenge.
Go ahead,
Thank
Dora.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Terry, and good morning again. So IDB Lab, in collaboration with the United Nations World Tourism Organization, launched on June the 15th, the Beyond Tourism Innovation Challenge. And this challenge is an open call, an open innovation call to attract and support a new wave of innovations in 15 tourism-dependent countries located in the Central American and Caribbean region, and Belize is one of them. The challenge is aiming to support innovations in two broad categories, workforce development and environmental sustainability. In workforce development, we are looking to upskill and retool the tourism workforce with the needed multidimensional skills for the recovery phase, particularly digital skills. In the category of environmental sustainability, we want to incorporate efficient and eco-friendly measures like waste management and circular economy approaches to preserve natural resources in tourist destinations, and also to support the value chains, the agricultural value chains, to meet the growing demand for sustainable food systems and the shift in the global consumption patterns and the demands of the tourist. So who can apply? Applicants from the public and private sectors are invited to apply, who are willing to reimagine tourism, to accelerate new trends and leapfrog to a digital economy. We would like to see applications from clusters of stakeholders in the tourism sector who are willing to join forces to transform the sector through innovation. We are mindful that there are technologies out there that may reside in different countries, in different regions, and this is why the challenge is also open to organizations from the 48 member countries of the IDB group, so that we can forge alliances with perhaps countries that want to invest in one of those 15 tourism-dependent countries, but always being mindful that we want partnerships to benefit one of those 15 countries that we want to target, because we want the capacities, technologies, and products to reside in those countries that we want to support through the challenge. There are two types of awards, IDB Lab financing, non-reimbursable financing in the form of grants, ranging from $250,000 to $500,000 US, and reimbursable financing from $500,000 to $2 million. There's also an award, a very interesting award of becoming part of IDB Lab's community of global innovators who will attain visibility and will ultimately acquire a number of opportunities to travel, to speak in different venues, and perhaps even to replicate that business model, that project across the region. It's also important to bear in mind that we are looking for alliances, partnerships in country, because this is an opportunity to improve the coordinated action of the different stakeholders in the value chain to ultimately enhance the resilience of the sector. And the challenge is open until July the 31st. So we encourage everyone to apply now.
When you look at the timeliness of this particular challenge, you're basically given a month to pitch in on an idea that will see the tourism landscape transform, for perhaps want of a better description. But you're also looking at the fact that most of the stakeholders in the industry are concerned with their respective properties or their respective operations, trying to get that off the ground ahead of the reopening of the airport and, of course, ahead of the upcoming tourism season. Is the period of a month sufficient time for them to be able to, sit down and brainstorm and then propose their ideas to you guys?
The challenge was launched on June the 15th.
Okay.
So it will be open for 7 weeks.
7 weeks.
We've run challenges of the sort, and also this is not the first or last challenge that is being conducted right now to support the sector. There are a few out there. In fact, our collaborator, the United Nations World Tourism Organization, they launched their very own challenge, Healing Solutions for the sector, and that was open for 2 weeks, and they received like 1,000 proposals. Of course, they have, a very broad presence in more than 100 countries around the globe, but this, all these ideas are already brewing in people's minds. This is not the first attempt, but rather we are trying here to contribute and consolidate an effort that has been in everyone's minds for quite a long time, since we were all in lockdown and we were canceling our travel plans and we were starting to dream on traveling again tomorrow.
Sani, if I could also chime in here, we do appreciate that there are a lot of moving parts and different things happening. The challenges envisaged to collect those ideas, but in the process, as is documented on our website, we go through, once we have shortlisted, a detailed process with the selected stakeholders in the design of the projects. So it is not that they are coming up with the detailed process of everything that they're going to do. It's going to be a collaborative approach, but they do have to come up with that concept by the July 31st.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I just wanted to add, based on Isani's comment, 2 things. The first is that our team has already started dialoguing and sensitizing several important tourism stakeholders in the country. For example, last week we had an excellent meeting with the BTIA, and there was a lot of enthusiasm about this challenge and initiative, and we will continue to do so over the next week or so, working with Beltrade and several other organizations that have expressed interest. Also, I want to say, simply based on the experience we have had with a social innovation challenge that was launched in October of 2019 and completed 3 weeks ago virtually, and the level of excitement and interest and the great innovative ideas that came out of that challenge. There were 3 winners, very, very exciting competition. We anticipate and look forward to real strong proposals from Belizeans, from the tourism sector in Belize.
Yeah, that was Change the Story, right?
Exactly, Change the Story. Very, very exciting challenge, and really showed the potential for social entrepreneurship and innovation in Belize.
And I think that's a critical point in the conversation. When we talk about innovation in general, we have seen things transform in a matter of weeks. At least here in Belize, we can speak of our personal experience when we started to face the impact of the pandemic. When movement was restricted, suddenly businesses that never thought they could go online were suddenly online. People who didn't know they could offer services in a different way started doing that as well. So the innovation was driven by the need to survive. I'd imagine that will add, that will be a benefit in terms of some of the applications you'll be seeing. People have already been thinking about survival and perhaps broadening in creativity so that they can be able to figure out how to do so.
Right. And also, I would say, as it relates to thinking about how the travelers now will be thinking and how we can create new products and services that will address those needs. There are a lot of people concerned about their security and moving back and forth in this age of pandemic and extended social distancing. How can we tailor our products and services to meet the demand of the new traveler?
So there are some specifics about the submissions that you are looking for. One of them, you talk about the workforce itself. Can we talk about that a bit more? Because when we talk about innovation and you're moving into a digital transformation, people automatically think they're going to be replaced by technology.
Well, not really. You cannot replace people who are offering who are safeguarding the health of the tourist, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what we're doing here is, as you rightly mentioned, we are accelerating and supporting that acceleration of something that already was going on and was happening. And you're right now on screen looking at the guidelines of the challenge. In those guidelines, we are particularly indicating why we're doing this and how we are doing this, and the importance of helping the sector attain the necessary skills to offer a better service, right? We want them to obtain all the training opportunities so that they can have different skills in order to welcome the tourists, engage in market intelligence, develop new interesting products, and ultimately reinforce their position in the supply chain so that they can, withstand and be resilient together with the sector.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the eligibility, people will assume that because we're talking about tourism that you have to already be established in the tourism sector. Can you talk to me about who can actually apply?
Sure. So we are trying to support the sector and those actors that are currently participating in the sector itself, right? So there is a huge change because the sector is very much related with other sectors as well.
Yes.
Right? So there's agriculture, there is the food security now, biosecurity protocols. There are a number of sectors that are touching upon the tourism sector itself. And so we are encouraging actors from the public and the private sector to apply, NGOs, associations, innovation agencies, university, you name it. Whoever comes up with a great idea, a great technological trend that can be adopted by the sector is invited to participate. Yes, there are requirements because we are a development bank and we must, preserve those financial resources that we administer. Mm-hmm. So we have to look for applicants who have the technical expertise and the financial management capacity in order to apply. We are looking to innovate through, technologies, but we also want those business models to transform into projects that have financial sustainability in the long term and that mostly can contribute to the country's social, economic, and environmental impact. That is key for us.
And they should be able to put up half of the cost of the project.
Yes. That's the way the IDB Lab, that's a mandate that we have in IDB Lab. We want our partners to have some skin in the game. Yeah. So we will be happy to match the resources, but we want them to bring in something also to the table so that we can build together that project that will ultimately have the impact that we want to.
And when you're judging the applications that you do receive, how do you weigh what's most important? Because innovation is definitely, I think, something where you can look at what's practical, what exists somewhere else, but then you also have to look at the current landscape. So how do you weigh what's most important when you review applications for an innovation challenge?
For this particular innovation challenge, we have set evaluation criteria that range from the level of innovation, as you were saying, to the social and economic and environmental impact, the scope of the project, if it involves vulnerable population, to what extent, if the model has financial sustainability, if it's viable. We also look at the capacity of the applicant. And the model itself, we want to understand the mechanics of the model. And when we look at the application, it has to be, clearly written so that you can really understand what is the final objective and the results that will be achieved. Yeah. So innovation, it all depends on the sector or subsector, right? And it all depends on the country. You cannot measure the same level of innovation that you will get from a project in, let's say, Mexico, right? From a project in a rather smaller island. You have to look at what has been, how innovation has been adopted in that country, and then that's how you rank innovation. And we use an online platform, and we also rely on a number of technical experts within the IDB group that are supporting this, so that the process itself is is curated, and it leads to a final result.
Now, if I could add, Marilyn,
yes.
Marilena, we had a challenge towards 2019, the beginning of 2019, and one of the projects from Belize that actually was selected, and we have developed a project, is a project around preserving livelihood of fisher folks in coastal communities by connecting them with seafood buyers through mobile application that provides a virtual marketplace. And this was done with Oceana in Belize. And it's solutions such as this that connects the vulnerable populations, connects technology, connects innovation, and ultimately impacts vulnerable communities. These are some of the solutions that we look at in the innovation landscape as it relates to relevance to the country, the issues that are happening in the country, and how innovative the model is in implementation in that country.
Now, you had mentioned before that, of course, the lab functions a bit differently. It's not just about receiving a proposal and choosing from there. There is some assistance in terms of ensuring that the project itself is well put together. Can you explain that portion of it for us?
Okay, so we go through let's call it a design thinking session with the executing agency. Once the proposal is did, and we work through what is going to be the design of that project, how we can connect. At the beginning, Dr. Rogers mentioned that a part of what IDB Lab does is around connections, network, financing. So what we try to do is, how do we look at this ecosystem approach in this project to have the best impact? And while doing that, also connecting different projects and technologies and innovations across the region to strengthen this into something that could have tremendous impact across the region. And during implementation, we are there with our partners to bring our knowledge and experience to the table to help them roll out these projects that they're doing.
Now, what do you say to persons who are interested? So they're watching and they're thinking of ways of moving forward, ensuring the sustainability of the workforce, of tourism. in what will be a different world. I think we can all accept that. About how to finalize those ideas. Innovation can be scary at times because it just seems a bit far-fetched. And being out of the box exactly is that situation. You're outside of the norm. So talk to us about what you would say to people about how to rationally put together their projects but still be able to be progressive in their thinking.
I could start if you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I've found, and I've spoken to a lot of private sector stakeholders who, when you say innovation, immediately they shut down because they're not quite sure what you're talking about.
Yeah.
One thing, it does help to do some research around what other markets are doing.
Yeah.
And it gets you thinking around what is possible. Our guidelines on our website, and Dora will give you more details around how to connect greater to us. Our guidelines do tell you some of the problem areas that can be addressed, and that triggers the thought of what is possible. How can we manage food security? Mm-hmm. How can we use artificial intelligence? And how can we use biosecurity in integrating solutions? So I would first start with look at what is happening around you. Bring your staff together, virtually, of course, to brainstorm some of the problems that your guests are having or some problems that are in the market, in the ecosystem, to then come up with these solutions. And then you can think about refining it. And we will have more sessions around bringing stakeholders together before the end of the challenge in Belize, so that we can help to guide that innovative thought process.
You could go ahead, Dr. Cassandra.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you can chime in your response as well.
No. I simply wanted to say and to compliment what Terry Ann said. This is a time, in our view, in the post-COVID, there are, some may say that, of course, there are a lot of negative impacts of the pandemic, but also there are significant opportunities, no? And we see the post-COVID environment and this type of challenge as an opportunity for this country and all of our countries to innovate. And so we hope that through this challenge, we will receive a significant amount of proposals. We would encourage it, as I think someone around the panel spoke today about the fact, not that there has not been innovation occurring, yes. We certainly, in our interaction with various arms of the public and private sector in Belize, the issue of innovation has been ongoing, but it is now time for it to be accelerated to respond to COVID, and so that the economy can recover, especially the tourism economy. And so we would encourage Belizeans in and outside of the tourism sector to fully take part in this initiative. The bank is very excited about it, and we look forward to working with Belize in its recovery.
All right. And those deadlines, once again.
The deadline is July the 31st. We have designed a web page to really guide the applicant through every single step of the process. We have the guidelines, that as Terry was mentioning, that detail every single aspect of what we are looking for in a very detailed manner. We also have a number of frequently asked questions that have already been developed. We have a mailbox in which we are receiving all sorts of inquiries, and we respond. Not even a day passes when we answer immediately to our applicants all the questions they have. And we also have in every single one of those 15 countries that we are supporting personnel, IDB Lab personnel, who are also open to provide any support needed during this process. And there is, you know, we are in Belize in particular, information sessions are upcoming to support in-country partners. But I would say, and I want to emphasize this, that it's important to view this as an opportunity to make an improvement in the sector through a coordinated action across all the actors in the tourism value chain, because again, the sector needs to enhance the resilience, but as a whole, involving all the different stakeholders, from, you know, the people who are providing transportation, food, lodging, tour operators, to the top tourism authorities in country. We believe that by acting as a cluster, as a whole, we will be able to support the sector even better.
Wonderful. Well, we do hope Go ahead.
If I may just add, Marlena, in the case of, to complement what Dora said, in the case of Belize, in addition to the website, if there are any questions or concerns, people who would like to apply, would like further information, please contact the country office. Our private sector, IDB Lab private sector consultant in the country office is Henry Wade. Please contact the country, Henry, for further information.
All right. It is a wonderful opportunity, I think well-timed, while we still try to claw our way out of this situation today. We're thinking all the way ahead as to the long-term sustainability. And so we do hope that you're inundated with applications.
As do we.
Thank you very much, ladies. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlena and Cassandra. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
There you have it. That is the latest innovation challenge coming out of the IDB Lab Beyond Tourism Innovation Challenge.